Hi, I'm Bill Deck. Join my brother Bob and me as we install zone equipment on our existing HVAC units in our own homes. This will help make our second floor cooler during the summer, a problem we both share. This is part 4. Installation and programming of a Honeywell HZ322 zone control board. If you would like to visit the other parts of this series, here are the links you can follow. This is not for the average do-it-yourselfer. You want to be an advanced do-it-yourselfer. You want to make sure that this is the right solution for your problem. I urge you to do thorough investigations from many sources to make sure that this will work for you. This is the Honeywell HZ322 panel. It will handle 3 zones with 2 stages of heat and 2 stages of cooling. The zones are Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3. This is where the connections to the equipment go. This is where the transformer ties into the unit. This is where the duct temperature sensor ties into the unit. The upper 3 on each zone control the dampers for that zone. What you're going to want to do is when you go to wire it, you're going to want to take a picture so you can identify all the wire colors and how they've been put on the thermostat. Then as you bring that down, you want to use the corresponding terminals down here. And then for adding a thermostat to your second floor or wherever you're trying to make changes to, you're going to wire that thermostat the same and make the same connections down here. Over here on the equipment, then that nomenclature is used again on each of the connections. You'll notice that if you have a thermostat that requires a C connection, you will not have a C connection over here. You do not make that connection over to the equipment. The thermostat here, or the temperature sensor here, you have 2 wires on the temperature sensor. It doesn't matter which order they're in. It just measures resistance and converts that into a temperature. Right now, this is showing at 73 degrees in the duct. That duct sensor should be put in the duct about 3 feet from the top of the air conditioning coil. Over here on the transformer, you have an R and a C terminal. You have both an R and a C terminal on the transformer too. You want to make sure you get those because this is polarized. To wire this, you look at this picture, you'll see that each of these little ovals on the side has 2 holes in it. That is where you're going to have to get the thing in. Not just the oval, but there's a hole at the top and bottom of the oval, and your wire has to go into one of those holes. Here you will push it in, and it secures in there. If you need to take it out, you're going to push this in and then pull it out. All of those terminals work that way. In my case, I only have dampers on the zone 1. The reason being, I'm trying to move air up to the 2nd floor during the summer. During the winter, everything seems to work well. We're comfortable up on the 2nd floor, we're comfortable on the 1st floor. So we'll let it be. I had an old wire that I'd put in the house to handle a intercom that never went in, but those wires were the same wire that you would wire a thermostat with. So I was able to access those on the 2nd floor, and I just hardwired my thermostat in on the 2nd floor. But if you can't get your wires up to the 2nd floor or to where you want to put your other zone, you can buy additional equipment. It's going to cost you several $100s, but then it comes with equipment that ties into the internet. The thermostat will work wirelessly back to the panel or back to the piece of equipment you purchased to bring it into the panel, and then a third piece of equipment would be required to tie into the internet, but all 3 run around $300. I didn't do it, so we don't need to worry about that. Now we will go over and discuss down here the programming of the unit. This is where you want to program your unit. You have a display window here that gives you information. Right now this window is telling me that it's 73 degrees inside the ductwork, which is near the ceiling of the basement. Okay, the first thing you're going to do, normal operation, you're in the home mode. You hit mode, and that brings you down to configure. It's going to ask you what type of system you have, either conventional or heat pump. Well, in this case I have conventional, so I'm going to hit next. Now, the next question is, how many stages does your equipment have for cooling? I have 1. You can set it at 0, 1, or 2. I'm going to hit next. How many heat stages? Well, I have 2, but if you only have 1, you can move it down to 1. I'm going to hit next at 1. And then it comes to the RF enabled. Well, I really have 2, so I'm going to go back and change that to 2. So I'm going to hit next. RF enabled. I do not have RF. That's if you're using a wireless thermostat. If you say yes, then you're going to have other questions to answer to tie your thermostats into the unit. I'm going to hit yes or no, and I'm going to hit next. Zones installed. Well, you can have 1 zone, 2 zones, or 3 zones. In my case, I have 2 zones. I'm going to hit next. Stage 2 control. Well, I only have stage 2 in my heating. I'm going to put it down for percent of zones, but you can have the thermostats control it. If the thermostats are calling for stage 2, then they would control it. There's a timer that can control it. Percentage of zones, and that's it. Or off. I use percentage of zones. So that's next. Advanced configuration. Questions are no and yes. Well, I want to do some advanced configuration on mine. So I hit yes. Now, on the heat fan control, I can have the equipment or the panel control it. I'm going to let the panel control it. I bought a nice panel. I want it to do what it's supposed to do. Okay, your purge time. That is to get the clear out the ducts after you've been heating or cooling. You can go 2 minutes, 3.5 minutes, or 5 minutes. I use 5 minutes. My reasoning is I want to mix the air through the house, do a little bit extra filtration by running air through the furnace. So I use 5 minutes. You could use another one, fan and purge. Okay, is the equipment control it or does the panel control it? Well, I opted for the panel to control it. Purge dampers. Now you have a choice. If it's been operating with the dampers closed, a set of the dampers closed, and you hit unchanged, then they will remain closed during the period that it purges. If you go to what I have set here, open, then they will open up and the air will circulate throughout the whole system. Changeover delay. Now this is if you have one area calling for heat and another calling for cooling, how long should it wait before it changes from heat to cooling? So I put 15. I'm not going to be in that situation. Really, it's this is not really set up to my system is not set up to operate that type of thing. So I'll hit 15 and next. Discharge sensor. It asks for if you have a discharge sensor. Let me see what that is because I don't have one. Enables or disables DATs. If disabled, the multi-stage DAT inhibit is disabled. So if you say yes, then you're enabling the duct temperature sensor to being able to change your settings if you reach too close to the high temperature. Let's hit next. You have a high limit of 160. The manual says anywhere from 110 to 180. It'll go in, if I go like this, you see it goes in 5-degree increments. 160 is the recommended. That's what I'm going to leave it at. Next is the low limit. Low limit is 30 to 60. Well, my air conditioning normally operates in a range of 55 down to about 50 degrees. So I'm going to leave it at the recommended 40. Hit next. The allows panel to downstage equipment. If you have, yes, it's enabled. So if you are getting, you have it in your furnace in high stage and it starts getting too hot, gets close to that too hot temperature, it will turn it back a stage to one stage. And so I'm going to say yes on that. Hit next. The contrast of this screen, it goes from 1 to 10. I think the 5 right in the middle is fine. I can read it. So I'm going to go next. Okay, then I'm offered the chance to save changes. Well, I've been bouncing around, so I better save them. So I'm going to say yes, and now it's saving the changes. Once it's saved, it will purge the system. You can say next. If you notice, the purge came on, the fan came on in zone 1 and 2. Well, really there's nothing in there to purge, so I'm going to say override yes. So now it slips back to the normal home screen. You can go out to a checkout which allows you to test all the different functions without going to the thermostat, setting the thermostat to control the unit. But in this case, we really will do our test by bringing up the thermostats on my cell phone. I can change the temperatures and see how they work. So we'll get into that now. If you look on my cell phone, I have my 2 thermostats displayed on the Honeywell app. Here, if I bring up the first floor, it's set at 64, or it's 74 on the inside temperature, set at 64, it's 82 outside. Now, if I bring this down to, let's say, 73, and I'd submit that. Now, it takes a little bit, the signal has to go, okay. If you see, the system came on. What we have is an indicator that zone 1 is calling for cooling and the fan is on. Zone 2 is not calling for anything. Well, with my setup, what will happen is nothing except the air conditioning will come on. Okay. And if I take this and I go back to the other thermostat, master bedroom, it's at 76 and the cool set point is at 76. Well, I'm going to lower that one and submit that change. And if you give it a second, zone 2 should turn green. Okay, so now both zone 1 and zone 2 are calling for air conditioning. The air conditioning's on, the fan's on. If I go back to the thermostats, on the first floor I say tell it to press options, and I want to cancel the last one. So now it's resetting it to, it will reset to 76. It takes a second before it resets. There it goes. Now, zone 1 is no longer calling for air conditioning. Zone 2 is calling for air conditioning, so you have cooling, zone 2, 1. What's going to happen now, since zone 1 is not calling for air conditioning and I need air conditioning up on the second floor, zone 2, it's closing the dampers on zone 1. This will place the air conditioning where I want it. Since I don't have a problem with downstairs, it still gets a little bit of air conditioning. I've only blocked off 4 dampers. Remaining dampers still get air conditioning, and one of them gets a little bit of bleed through the way it's set. Okay, now if I go back, and I want to go back to the thermostats. I want to go to the master bedroom, and I'm going to press for options, and I'm going to tell it to cancel the hold I placed on it. Now it's actually lowered the temperature by a degree upstairs, and the set point 76. So as this came down, it turned off the cooling. Here you can see no cooling light, zone 1 and zone 2, because once it takes that off, I have it set to open the dampers. The dampers will be opening now. The fan is on to purge. This will last for 5 minutes, and then everything, these 2 lights will go off, everything will turn off. I'm not going to run the heat during the summer, but heat would operate similarly. You might get both stages coming on, and that's pretty much the operation of the zone panel.